Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12 noon on Friday, the 30th of April, the last day of April. Can you believe that we're already at the end of the fourth month of the year? And I'm very pleased to welcome you to this particular Lessons in Leadership because it's our episode 25. I can't believe we're through 25 episodes already. And my goal is to record 50 of these. So we are halfway through, and I'm very, very pleased to welcome today Greg Garrity. Hello, Greg.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Really lovely to have you here. So Greg is CEO of Drive Change for Good, which is a charity committed to ending loneliness, which really resonates with me, and I think resonates with probably lots of people that will be watching this, either watching today or later on. But also you've had a very rich career in the care industry. You've set up and run your own care companies and very successfully done that, and also been on the board of over 10 of them, which is remarkable. So you've got tons of experience of how to build and run a successful business, but also making it a supportive business in terms of it being in the care industry. I'm also intrigued because you went into the property business as well in terms of housing in the care sector. So I'm curious to hear about that. And then more recently, you've become a coach, an international speaker, and you've got a book coming out soon. So you've been very, very busy. One of these people that just seems to have so many strings to your bow. I'm really curious to find more out about your journey. So let's kick us off first of all. And it's always maybe hard to do this with so many things that you've done, but your charity is Drive Change for Good. Yes. How did you get to establishing that charity from running really successful businesses in the care sector? Give us a bit of background to your story, Greg.
Oh, good heavens. Okay. So it came as part of a complete role reversal in my life.
Okay.
As you say, I was very busy, and I was running a lot of very successful companies. I had hundreds of staff, and I did what a lot of people do in my situation. I basically burnt out and needed. Well, I just ceased to be useful in the role I was in, and I had a chat with my business partner and decided I was going to have a sabbatical for 6 months and get my head together again. And during that 6 months, I got to see how much I wasn't there for my children and how much I wasn't there for my parents. My children and I were living with my parents at the time, and a big house, and I decided that I was going to commit to looking after my parents the way they'd looked after me when I was smaller. I thought, return the favor.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was so experienced and so knowledgeable of the care industry, I thought if anyone's going to give them an excellent time, if you like, it's going to be me.
Yeah.
I hadn't taken into account the emotional and physical cost of being a carer at the time.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was both of my parents were very ill. My mum had cancer. My dad had all sorts of things wrong with him. And within 6 months, I was a shadow of my former self. I'd gone. I mean, obviously, I was already burnt out to begin with, but after 6 months of 2 hours a night or 2 hours sleep tops, broken sleep, caring for them, I'd lost. I hadn't realized, but I'd lost which way was up totally. I still felt like the in control business person I'd always been. I've always been a person that shaped the world to suit me, if you like, in terms of business. And I thought I was still doing that, but I had no clue. I had no idea of reality. I completely lost the plot, and within a year, I'd given all of my businesses away to business partners, handed keys and bank cards and everything else, because I couldn't focus on anything else other than the immediate thing of looking after my mum and dad on a daily basis and making sure my kids were sorted. So that was that was probably 18 months I looked after mum before she died. And then as soon as my mum died, my dad went massively downhill with dementia. I don't know whether he'd been holding on because he was looking after mum, or whether we just hadn't seen the lead up because we were all focused with mum. So that was another 2 years before he was taken into full-time care. They wouldn't release him back to me at one point from the hospital. They just said, no, he's got to go into care. You can't cope. And at that point, I was unrecognizable. I was agoraphobic. I couldn't. When I went shopping, the only time I left the house was to go shopping, and it was to go to Sainsbury's at like 2 a.m. in the morning. So I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could walk around and do that. And I realized it took strong friendships and people that had known me before when I had been good at what I was doing and when I had been at the top of my game. It took people really digging in and helping me through to get back on my feet. I was offered non-exec positions on boards where I actually wasn't, as I stood, I was nowhere near qualified for, but they knew that by putting me in that situation would bring me back, and that's what happened.
Yes.
And because of that, I thought, if I can take my A game and this can grind me into the dirt, then what are the hundreds of thousands of people that we know that are informal carers in the country? How are they managing if they haven't got that experience, if they haven't got the education, if they don't know where to turn? They're probably sat there thinking, why am I even alive?
Yes.
Is this it? And just the isolation that I felt, even though I had a sibling, he's a busy man, he's got a small family. You don't realize how your world becomes this big.
Yes.
All of a sudden you're running around in the tiniest of circles, thinking you're still thinking of everything. I've got it all covered. I've got it all covered. You've actually got nothing covered.
Yeah.
We've got no quality of life. And as a consequence, I decided that I would develop an organization that used existing tech and future tech to ensure that we never, or anyone ever, had to suffer social isolation again. There's always going to be people that say, I'm not interested, I want to be by myself. And that's absolutely fine. But for the people that don't, I want to change that.
Yeah. I think, I'm kind of blown away by what you said. Very, very touching to hear that story, Greg. Because, I mean, first of all, the description of the day in, day out. And I know you love your parents, and, when you're a carer, you absolutely do it from the commitment and joy and the love that you have for the person you're doing it for. Though I should imagine sometimes that can be challenged as well. But there are hundreds and thousands of people who take the role as carer, and you've just given us such a very powerful description of how it can be, and how I have no idea how many in the country are carers, but I know there's hundreds and thousands of them, and yet it can be such an isolating and lonely position in the world.
Well, there's tens of thousands of children that are looking after parents, young carers that are slipping through the system because we have no way of assisting them currently. The entire well, it's not just the care system, all of our systems, nothing's changed for 100 years.
Yes.
Except for the fact that we know budgets are gradually decreasing annually, and they're going to continue. There is no sign in the future of any upward trend. So why are we not going back to basics, completely dismantling the system and saying, here's how we can do it better? What we need to do.
So you're a man on a mission, is what I can hear. Absolutely, from your own experiences of what you went through and how you were at the end of that experience.
Yes.
Just incredible. So tell us a bit more then about Drive Change for Good. You said it's about using technology to ensure that people aren't left in this isolated, lonely position. I personally, as a non-techie person, I'm not clear how that would work. So tell me a bit more about what Drive Change for Good is all about.
So without going into specific details, it's going to sound a little bit vague, but it's because I'm determined not to have a one size fits all.
Okay.
You know, that's where everything falls down.
Yeah.
It's like if you're not this shape, you can't have this service.
Yeah.
If you're £4.50 a week over what we say is the budget, you can't have that service. It's ridiculous. So we need a service that is able to adapt to the people, and
flexibility
I believe
is key.
Yeah, and evolution as well, because Drive Change for Good, its primary purpose is to enable pilot projects for care in the community that the government would never ever fund. Prove them successful, and then go to local authorities for funding.
Right. Okay.
So for example, I believe that for a chunk of the money that we waste on missed appointments, ambulances called out for people when they're not necessary because they're depressed, or people who've taken overdoses, or whatever, you know, those hidden costs that are driving the NHS into the ground.
Yes.
I believe for a fraction of those costs, I can provide people with 24-hour-a-day access to someone they know and trust and can speak to them face to face.
Right.
So that's one of the services.
Okay.
You know, and it literally is about enabling people to get to know each other. You know, my ideas are, I'm going to say, future-proof, in that they're not fixed ideas. You know, there should be, with any care organization, there should be an idea whereby we work for 6 months or a year on a project, and then we sit back and reflect and go, how can we make this better for our service users?
Yes.
How can we make this better for our staff? You know, how do we increase the experience and the satisfaction on both sides of the fence?
Yes.
And it might be
building learning into the process is what I'm hearing.
And it might be then you're going to take a sharp left turn on where the service started.
Yes. Yes.
But you can't do that under the current regime, because the money you're given, you're tied in from local authorities. And obviously it's not like I'm painting them badly. They've got their own structure, they've got their own budgets, they've got to meet these standards because they're being assessed. But when you sign a contract, it's for X number of hours to achieve this, that, and the other. And it's either a tick or a cross. And if it's a cross, you hold over the coals for it, and maybe you lose the contract.
Yes.
And if it's a tick, it's like, well, carry on, you're doing well. But in reality, you might be working in a situation where staff are staying extra time to ensure the person they're working with is successful.
Yes.
Because their job may be dependent on whether that person is successful.
Okay.
You know, there's no massive margins in care. There never has been. Well, care homes 20, 30 years ago, I believe, probably they fleeced the system. But throughout care in the community, there are no massive margins.
Right.
So there's you're not able to care. And you find one of the companies I had was a domiciliary care company. And my ladies were amazing. They used to go in and really look after, really go over what they were meant to do. And you'd find that people that were cognitively all there, but perhaps physically unable to get around the house, maybe they had a stroke, or maybe they'd lost legs or whatever, they were doing things that almost demeaned them. Like for example, one particular person that we worked with, a very intelligent guy, a very lonely guy. He used to soil himself every morning visit just as the girls were leaving. So they had to stay another 20 minutes to clean him. He wasn't doing that because he couldn't make it to the toilet. He was desperate for attention.
Yes.
Because
that's the loneliness element coming in.
He got 20 minutes in the morning. In that morning visit, they made him a sandwich, which he ate for lunch, and then he got 20 minutes at night. That was him. That was
So
all he
you meant
saw.
so that's an example of someone who's really, really lonely, and they obviously were behaving in a way to try and keep some attention there. How will Drive Change for Good address that level of loneliness? You mentioned use of technology. How will that work?
Well, it's going to be, it's about interaction with people. They've got no other interaction with people. You know, we've
Yes.
all jumped on to a certain degree. If we'd had this conversation about Drive Change for Good 18 months ago,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be getting it in the way that you are now, because everybody
Yes.
now understands social isolation.
Yes.
For what?
Yeah.
Two, everyone's now using Zoom and technology like it, which they weren't
Yes.
before.
Yes.
So for example, you know, just taking it at a simplest level, if you provided some sort of Zoom link for somebody, they would be able to talk to someone
Yes.
that they might have known for years, but you know, no clue where they lived or whatever. And it's about Drive Change for Good's about building community.
Yeah.
So not only are we providing pilot projects that influence and create value for people who are currently socially isolated,
Yes.
we're also working with people that want to create a better community where they are. You know, at the end of the day, what's come up most during this lockdown? It's isolation, feeling of not being worthy. You know, people not being able to get validation because they're used to
Yeah.
being validated externally. We need to get back, I believe, to a situation whereby in the 70s and the 80s, we used to have community centres.
Yes.
And those community centres were very busy. They were busy all day, every day, whether it was with the I can't even think of whatever. They had various clubs throughout the day, and then every evening there was scouts and there was guides and there was all sorts of things.
Yes.
And everybody knew that, you know, a weekend there'd be a cheesy disco or
The
something
local
like
church
that.
hall, yeah, the local church hall was always full.
Yeah.
I mean, so what I'm noticing though, because absolutely we've all experienced social isolation to a degree through this pandemic, but I've also noticed that community has kicked in as well. So, for example, where I live, you know, people have reached out to their neighbours, which ordinarily they wouldn't have done. And you know, when things were going on locally where people couldn't get out at all. I think it was when there was snow around. People were saying, "I'm off to Tesco's. Give us your shopping list," and they were doing shopping for everybody in the locality. So community has emerged out of this pandemic as well, stronger, I would say. It's about how do we sustain that, and it sounds like your charity
That's absolutely right.
is all around that. And I'm hearing there's the use of technology, there's the use of the new, you know, like Zoom has become kind of every day for all of us now, so we can sustain that. But have you also got in your sights getting people together personally as well, when that is possible, beyond six people? You know, that's part of what your vision is as well.
Yes, because I think, you know, people always hark back to I don't know, in the old days, whenever that is. I mean, for the kids today, that's the start of this century. For us, it's way back. But you know, they all say it was always better in the old days because you didn't have to lock your doors and you didn't have to do this and you always knew your neighbours. And we've got to take into account change. Change is inevitable. Change is happening as we're speaking.
Yes.
And we're never going to get to a situation again where everyone's on the same street for 10 years. But imagine, for example, if people on a street had a WhatsApp group just for that street. And every time and you've always got people that are living there for their entire lives. There's very, very rarely you get an entire street that is transient. Yeah. So imagine that the person that's been there for 20 years, they might be the point of contact. You know, so when new neighbours come in, they go over and they go, "Hi, yeah, my name's so-and-so. I just want to introduce you to our WhatsApp group. Here's our number. When you join that, you'll be able to ask about the area. If ever you need anything, the neighbours are all here for you."
Yes.
They don't have to turn up and bring cake or whatever, but it's available. You know, I do an interview series called A Voice for Humanity. Yeah. I've been taught, and you've been a guest on it.
I've been a guest, yeah, I
have. And one of the people on that was saying that their street has a WhatsApp group, and they were inviting everybody out to sit in the gardens and chat over coffee. You know,
Yeah.
hey guys, 10 o'clock coffee, yeah. And one of the ways we need to sustain it, I believe, is to not allow big industry to start dictating how people work now that they've sussed out how they can work properly. I mean, yes, there are always going to be people that need to work in offices, but we can't allow the government to turn around. And I'm not political in this at all, but we can't allow a government to turn around and say, well, this city's dying, we need everyone to come back to the offices, because it's change.
Well,
You know,
I think
maybe those office buildings need to be something else now that's going to benefit
and
us.
I know in London they're starting to look at office buildings as and turning them into homes for people. So that is starting to happen. Actually, there's also something around to that point around giving people choice, because actually the most motivating thing for people is to feel they have a say and they've got a choice in the matter as well. So for me, how it looks is that, you know, some of the time they'll be working. I know, for example, my daughter is desperate to get back into the office. So younger people enjoy that social interaction, whereas people that have got commitments at home, kids or whatever, it's often easier to work from home. So it's giving people that choice and the balance.
You've raised a very valid. Yeah, and you've raised a very valid point there, in that a lot of people say, well, my entire social life's at work. But your entire social life is at work because that's where you spent your life. If you spend your life at home, you'll develop your social network there. You know, we've trained ourselves into the way we look at it, and it's not healthy. You know, if you've got to travel an hour to actually meet people that you know, and you don't know the people on your doorstep, something's amiss.
And that's a way of building community. People are basing at home. Maybe that's why community has come through more locally during the lockdown, because people have been based at home and they're connecting and building relationships with people more locally. I'm really conscious of time. This is a really fascinating conversation. So I'm really enjoying it. I hope people that have been watching are enjoying it too. You know, at this point, I normally ask my guests, you know, tell us about a moment that really changed you as a leader, that had a profound impact on you. But I feel like you've already shared that with us, Greg. Is that right?
I have indeed, yes. And to clarify that further, I was very much a driven person that didn't believe that anything was impossible.
Yeah.
And couldn't understand when other people weren't the same as me. If I'm perfectly honest, I probably wasn't.
So what have you taken then? What qualities have emerged from this experience that you described right at the beginning, from going through that burnout, from looking after your parents? What has emerged for you as a leader in how you are?
I'm very much conscious of the things I do now.
Yeah.
I don't try. And I'm very aware of myself now, a lot more aware of myself. And because of that, I'm aware of how other people are, if that makes sense. So I'm very trusting in the way that I work with the people that I work with, for example.
Yes.
In the old days, I'd have probably tried to micromanage and want to know where people are at, whereas now, if someone says, yes, I will do that task, I don't give it a second thought unless they come up to me with queries. And so that makes me a lot more relaxed and a lot nicer to be around.
And what it's a lovely example of is, you know, you really went through it, that story of, you know, burning out, then caring for your parents for 2 years, almost losing the plot. It's a great example of how when we go into that breakdown, we do break through and we transform. And you're a great example of transforming and creating something that is really amazing. I mean, Drive Change for Good has got such a wonderful mission and vision for what you want to create. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you've said, you've raised a point in my head. You know, when I walked away from those businesses, they were all 6, 7 figures. And I suppose part of me could look back and be really bitter and everything else. Oh, threw it all away and blah, blah, blah. I wasn't thinking straight. But I couldn't be happier. I absolutely couldn't be happier. I don't see it as a loss. I see it as shedding a skin I needed to go forward to where I am now.
Yeah. And what is it, do you think, that is causing at the source of your happiness now?
I'm on purpose. What I'm doing is not for me. It won't particularly make me wealthy, but it will stop people, hopefully, having to go through what I went through, or if they're already going through that, it will alleviate their pressure. And for me, that's enough.
Yes.
I think we're at an age now, and I don't mean a physical age, I mean a period in time where, I look at the young people of today in their 20s, mid-20s. I've never known a group of more focused, conscious and conscientious people. And I think the world is changing.
Yeah.
You're always going to get idiots who will try and do you over for a pound, or as you know with your book, whose egos are bulletproof. But I think generally a lot of us are looking for a purpose to commit to throw our brains and hearts into, that's going to make a difference. And
Yes.
I think that's the only way at the end of the day that we're going to have the life that everybody wants. There's so much inequality.
Yes.
It just can't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Greg, we're at the end of our time. So I just want to say thank you for some very deep reflections and insights for today. Very, very rich conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed having you here. I'm hoping at some point to start a podcast off. So going beyond doing these Facebook Lives, I will definitely have you back for one of those if you'd be willing to come. But thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you to everyone for watching today, and for those watching and catch up, please do put your comments in the comments box below. I do always answer those. It's always lovely to hear from you. Next week we have Lulu Mins, who runs Rebel Radio, and she also runs amazing retreats for dynamic women as well. So I'm very much looking forward to meeting Lulu then. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody. Enjoy the bank holiday on Monday, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much again, Greg. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.